Hello there, guys. Welcome back to my channel for another edition of the latest Chelsea transfer news. Dan McCarthy should be joining us in just a couple of minutes. He just texted me he's going to just be a few minutes late. But Lewis is here already, so let's just start. And Dan can join us in the next few minutes whenever he's here. We already have nearly 70 people here, which is huge. So if you're new here, please be sure to subscribe. That'd be massively appreciated. Smash that like button. And bloody hell, we've had a crazy 24 hours or whatever it is. It's been or 48, whatever it is. It's been a madness. It's been a madness. Out of nowhere, we was all like, we're going to get Lukaku. And then from 1 second to the other, Lukaku says, well, I'm kind of staying. And then everybody's like, well, what the hell do we do? And we're linked to mugs like, I don't know, talking about people like Andre Silva and whatever kind of weird things we were talking about. And all of a sudden, from one day to another, all of the big sources tell us Erling bloody Haaland, first of all, wants Chelsea, is what came out today. He wants to join us, according to the Telegraph, which literally word for word is nearly the same tweet they tweeted pretty much a year ago about Kai bloody Havertz, and we knew how that ended. So I'm gassed. And also, Roman apparently wants this. Jan, we're joined by Dan. Mr. Dan McCarthy, how you doing, man? I know it's very early for you. I do appreciate you coming on. I hope you're good.
Always.
And what crazy 24 hours we've had in terms of transfer news, eh?
Yeah, it's been pretty mental. I haven't been on Twitter yet, but my phone's been blowing up, that's for sure. I'm hearing a couple of things about Haaland's happened, so yeah.
That's kind of what it is. I mean, it's even come out that apparently he wants to join us now. Not just, we want him, but apparently he wants us now, which is good. And obviously, I'm going to try not to butcher his name. Obviously, everyone will know who I'm talking about. I'm going to try anyway. Jan Arge Fjordtoft, right? Former Norwegian footballer, tweeted obviously yesterday, Chelsea working intense to get Erling Haaland. He is seen as the missing player to make them challenge for the Premier League title next season. Very high fee, but confidence that this can be solved. The main obstacle could be the wage structure at Chelsea. Obviously, I'll get Dan on the latest of what he knows, at least, on the current situation. Obviously, we'll talk about other positions and other players as well, because, we're not going to only be here for 10 minutes, are we? So there's a lot to discuss. Lewis as well. Crazy last, like I said, 24, 48 hours. First of all, how you doing? Second of all, how much is this? How have we gone from, Lukaku, maybe not after he said, his thing and everybody lost their minds. And now it looks like bloody Erling Haaland is happening. How are you feeling about all of that?
Is this on to me?
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, it's kind of disappointed with the Lukaku news, but I don't think we've really thrown Lukaku out the water and said that it's done yet. So I don't really know what to make of it, because the Haaland news, it just showed, the only thing I've really got out of that is that we are willing to pay 150 million and that Erling Haaland is interested. He's not said Chelsea's his outright club that he wants to go to in his only option, but it's like he's just said he likes what we're doing and he wouldn't mind being a part of it. That's what I've got out of it, really. I'm not really trying to take too much into it. I don't think, yes, it's done. We're getting Erling Haaland. He wants to come to Chelsea, anything like that. I just think things look favourable for us. And I think it's also a case where we're gauging the whole situation around us, where Manchester City wants Harry Kane. If they end up making a move for Harry Kane, it might force us to make a move for a striker as well. Because we all know if Man City get a top-tier striker and no one else does, the league's finished before it even starts. That's the final piece of the puzzle they need. So we need to be able to act right as well. That's why we have to go for a striker too. And it's also a bit more favourable for Dortmund to sell now as well, because they'd get double the amount of money they'd be getting next season. But in terms of how big the last 24 to 48 hours have been, all it's really done is confirm that there's interest and that Chelsea are willing to make the move for Haaland. And we weren't really sure if they were going to do that beforehand because of the price tag. Now we know the price tag doesn't mean anything. That's all I've really got out of it. But in terms of the deal, I'm trying to take everything with a pinch of salt. I know he's interested. I know he likes what we're doing and he wouldn't mind being a part of it. But I also think there's plenty of other clubs that he wouldn't mind being involved with if they had interest as well. But we have the money to be able to pay now, whereas a lot of clubs don't, which is the only difference. So if Haaland wanted to push for the move, he'd be willing to come to Chelsea. I also think the same way, he wouldn't mind waiting a year either, because they have Champions League football now. And if it comes to a case of next year, suddenly we have 3 times as many clubs trying to go for his signature because he's now just that much more affordable than he was this season. So, in terms of the last 48 hours, like, I'm not really sure because our options haven't really changed. They've all remained the same. It's either Kane, Haaland, Lukaku, or nobody really. Everyone else is just throwing a bunch of options that I don't think would suit us for numerous reasons regarding wherever the player is. But yeah, like, all it's done is just said there's interest from Haaland, and if that happens, if we make the move for him, cool. Like, of course, I'm going to support him and everything like that. I still say Lukaku is our best option, but if we are to get Erling Haaland, it's a much more long-term signing, and my only worry is the first season. So after the first season, there's no worries from me, so I'm all for it as well.
Fair dues. I mean, why I'm kind of gassed and hyped and whatever you want to call it is, like I said, that Telegraph tweet is literally copy and paste from the Kai Havertz tweet last year. I mean, like, it tells us things. Now, obviously, you're 100% right. Don't read too much into things. Obviously, how much has really changed. But, you know, I will drop a little bit of my personal in-the-know knowledge, you know, after I let Dan speak, because for once I know something, which I will share with you people.
I can't be asked.
There you go. But before that, I will give it to you, Dan. Now, obviously, like I said, for Dan, it's just not even 8 a.m. in the morning yet over in Los Angeles. So he might have missed a couple of things that happened, like, for example, that Erling Haaland is apparently interested in joining us as well, compared to like the February reports when he apparently didn't see Chelsea as a big enough club or whatever, which is a bit of a change in that. But how do you see the whole situation evolving, and do you know anything on the current situation? How serious are we about Haaland? Is it just a case of, do we prefer Lukaku? Do we prefer Haaland? Or is there a first option between those two?
Yeah, so what I will say is the whole thing in February, right, about Chelsea not being a big enough club, that was never a thing. That was just a made-up rumour. Haaland likes Chelsea. Like Lewis said, though, it's not like, oh, that's my dream club, I want to go there immediately. He just, you know, if they pay him 350 grand a week, he'll go there, right? I think most people would, to be honest. So I think that's what that is. Chelsea haven't given up on Lukaku, but Haaland has always been number one for the board and Roman. There's a lot of people within the board who like Lukaku, prefer Lukaku because he's less risky, right? And he's a safer bet. But if you ask Roman Abramovich who he wanted, he would say Haaland. Haaland's his dream. So as soon as it became apparent that we could potentially get Haaland, Lukaku was kind of dropped because we were negotiating pretty heavily with Lukaku's team a few weeks ago, kind of going in saying how much would it cost, because obviously Inter Milan need to sell. Lukaku would be open to it. But as soon as that interest was kind of diminished a little bit and the Haaland news came back around, Chelsea immediately switched their focus to Haaland. And I think that's part of why Lukaku came out and said, well, I'm going to stay at Inter then. I think it was kind of a bit of a, you know, an ex-girlfriend, if you like, kind of move. So that's what I've kind of been told. But I wouldn't give up on it 100%, right? Because the Haaland transfer is going to be twice as hard as the Havertz transfer was. And if that doesn't go well, then I think Chelsea, there's still a lot of people within Chelsea who still like Lukaku. And that'll be an easier deal to do. Not an easy one, but easier. So I wouldn't give up on Haaland. I wouldn't give up on Lukaku 100%. But Haaland's always been the number one for Roman. And if he can get him, he will try. And yeah, Haaland does like the project. He likes the fact it's a young team and they can stick together for a while. It's a project. He likes a project, as we've seen with his previous moves, right? He's very calculated in where he goes. And he likes the fact of living in London. He likes coming back to the Premier League, obviously. I know City interests him too, but we don't know if City are going to make that move for him yet. So, yeah, no, it's very early days. I'm sure you're going to ask me more questions about Haaland, so I'll wait for those.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, there is a lot to dissect really about the whole thing. Like, obviously, like Lewis touched on earlier already, there is this buyout clause or whatever, or this release clause that he has next season, which puts him down to, what is it, 80 million euros or 80 million pounds, one of the two, something around that price bracket, which obviously takes the value down drastically. But that obviously puts a lot more clubs into contention, because obviously with the pandemic that has gone on for the last 18 months or whatever, a lot of clubs are struggling financially, and there is very few clubs that have the financial capabilities that Chelsea do have. So waiting a year just, in my opinion, makes getting him not impossible, but just a lot more difficult. Yeah, sure, cheaper, but you have much more fierce competition, whether it's then Real Madrid or Barcelona or Bayern Munich, who might then be able to afford him, or whoever else can come in. Even, I don't know, Liverpool, I don't know if they can pull off 60, 70, 80 million. I don't know if that's even stiff competition for us these days. Who knows? But it's certainly made more difficult if we wait a year. But obviously, there have been so many numbers that have been thrown around and how much Haaland would cost. And some people have said 170 million, 150 million. And then some people say, yeah, but he would actually only cost us 120 and like 90 up front and then the rest in bonuses. And like there's so many random numbers thrown about. The same with his wage, demands. Like there have been a few reports, can't remember how long ago, maybe 6 weeks or so, but I think it was a report from goal.com. And they were like, yeah, he's basically demanding what converted to English pounds would be £575,000 per week, which I was always like, are we sure about this? Like, are we sure that he wants that kind of crazy money? Obviously, there will be some sort of agent fees involved, and we know that his agent, Mino Raiola, is one of the, let's say, most controversial people in terms of agents out there in the world of football. But just to ask you a few numbers, Dan, and obviously you don't know this for a fact either, and we'll see what happens if we ever do get him. But if I just ask you now, say Chelsea were to get Haaland, how much money do you think he would cost us, taking wages aside, just in terms of transfer fee, including all sorts of bonuses?
I think transfer fee you're looking at around between 120, 150.
In pounds,
Yeah. And then there will be bonuses, there will be add-ons, there will be breakdown. People don't realise how complex that stuff is. Spreading costs over years, accounting, balancing the books, financial fair play, which I don't think is even a thing anymore. Yeah, it's not as simple as, all right, here's 150 million, and that's it. Like, it's a lot. So yeah, it'll be a big lump sum up front. I'm sure they'll break it down to for other places. And then, yeah, like you say, the wage packet and the wage packet is going to be huge. And then the agent fees is going to be huge as well. So when you go all in, you go more, 150 to 170, 180. But yeah, I would say 120, 150 for the transfer fee alone. In terms of wage, from what I've heard and been told, he wants to be one of, if not the highest paid player at the club, put him above Conte, right? That's what he wants to be. But he's not going to get 500,000 a week at Chelsea. Like, that's not going to happen. So I think Conte's on what, 200, high 200s, right? So somewhere around there, maybe a bit higher in the 300s. That's probably what Haaland wants.
Exactly. And I mean, people have made a lot of fuss about, what if he ruins the wage structure? I've always tried to put it into a little bit of context. Is like, players might kick off and blah, blah, blah. And someone like Mason Mount or, eventually Reece or whatever, they might then say, well, shouldn't I be getting that type of money? Maybe, because they're some of our top performers. But if you sign someone like Erling Haaland, who has at the age of 20 scored 40 plus Champions League goals and in the last 18 months scored like 70 goals in all competitions. Like, I don't think as a player, just to say a random person like Giroud or Tammy Abraham, you can say, well, then I also want to be on this money. No, because a guy comes in that brings much more to the table, that warrants more money, if that makes sense. Obviously, if he comes in to get like 500k, that's a bit outrageous. But if it's like 350, even up to 400, I'm like, well, you're signing a potential Ballon d'Or winner in the future. Sure, we also kind of did that with Kai Havertz, but Kai Havertz didn't have that type of hype, I suppose, but also that type of just, aura with him. Like, how much people have been speaking about Erling Haaland ever since his move from Red Bull Salzburg to Borussia Dortmund, obviously. And then obviously his debut, scored a bloody hat-trick off the bench and his literally first game for Dortmund. Like, you can't make bigger headlines than that. So unless it's anything over 400k, I don't think the whole wage structure problem, it ruins everything. It's like, that becomes a problem if he doesn't perform. But if he comes in and he's a best player and scores 25, 30 goals every season, I don't think many of the players will complain much that he earns more than them, because he does more than them. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not sure how you see that, Dan, and I'll take it to Lewis on that as well. But I think people are slightly overcomplicating the whole wage structure problem, unless it's crazy, crazy money compared to what we already pay. Someone like Kante. Mind you, Kante is, at least according to Fabrizio Romano, expected to sign a new contract in the summer. It's unlikely that it's going to be on less money. So,
I mean, yeah, I'll let Lewis get involved. Go on, Lewis. It's been a while. Go ahead, buddy.
I was just typing something down. What was the point?
Basically, just if, unless Haaland is on crazy, stupid money, like 450 upwards, it doesn't really kill the wage structure. Like Dan touched on earlier, Kante's on 290, will probably will sign a new contract apparently this summer. That means he will probably be on even a little bit more money. Who knows? It's Kante. He's a humble guy, it won't be crazy more probably, but a little more, probably 300k slightly upwards. So then if you bring Haaland in and he's on 350 or 400, how much does it really kill the wage structure? I said it only really becomes a problem when he doesn't perform. If he performs and scores 25, 30 goals, no one has a go. No one in the squad has a go at him making more money than them. No one had a go at Hazard making more money than the other players because they knew he was the best player.
Yeah, I think it just puts more pressure on him to hit the ground running. If you're a highest paid player from the start, you have to be playing like you're a highest paid player. And that's been my worry, that he won't hit the ground running. But my worry isn't about his long-term ability at the club. I do think he'll be a success regardless if he joins. It's just going to be a case of time. So if he was to have that first season dip, I wouldn't be worried about the second season. So for me, I get where you're coming from on it. Like, one of the biggest problems was the wages, but as long as it's nothing like that £1 million a week or whatever nonsense we're hearing Raiola wants at the start, yeah, 300k a week isn't really as bad, especially you noting that Kante's on 290k a week. I really thought it was less than that.
Well, that's what certainly was reported when he initially signed the contract. And I can't remember if it was with Dan or somebody else, but somebody said, well, in America, what happens is they get more money at the start of their contract than at the end. But as far as I'm aware, at least, that is not a thing in football. If you sign a contract on so and so much money per week, you get that for the duration of your contract. Plus, obviously, certain performance-based bonuses and whatever else, right? But in terms of base wage, that doesn't become less during the duration of your contract. Before I get into what I kind of touched on earlier already, so basically, just to hint on it a little bit, I'm good friends with the guy that works for Red Bull Salzburg. I'm not saying I know everything about Erling Haaland now. I'm just saying I'm good friends with a guy that works for Red Bull Salzburg and I've seen the guy work there because there's been a lot of reports and about like, maybe he's a bit of a difficult character and he's this and he's that. And do you really want that type of guy in the dressing room? That's what I want to shed a little bit of light on, but also how much we can, sort of pay attention to what this, I'm going to try to pronounce his name again, Jan Arge Fjortoft says, whether that has any weight to it, because obviously say, if it's not Matt Law and if it's not Fabrizio Romano, who cares? Do you know what I mean? But like I said, I want to shed a little bit of light on that. Before that, quickly, this video is again brought to you by OneFootball, so quickly just pay attention. Don't have to tell you the next clip. I'll talk to you right after. Massive thank you to OneFootball for partnering up with me again. But they're not just being great to me, they're also absolutely brilliant to you guys watching. Because OneFootball are doing a massive giveaway. The Euros are about to kick off and I'm incredibly excited for it. But OneFootball are making it even better by giving away official England jerseys to some of you guys. And all you have to do, literally all you have to do, is go into the description below, click on the link, download the OneFootball app, follow the instructions and enter the competition for a chance to win an official England jersey. I've said it before and I'll say it again. OneFootball is a brilliant app that honestly everyone should have on their phones, especially with the Euros coming up now. It absolutely guarantees that you do not miss out on anything. But not just that, they're even giving you the chance to win an England kit. How bloody good is that? So again, go down below into the description, download the app with the link, follow the instructions and enter the competition. Good luck and let's get back to the video. And what I do want to say about his character and stuff, about Erling Haaland, what I've been told by the guy that works for Red Bull Salzburg, who I suppose gives us a little bit of an inkling, at least, to what he was like, 18 months ago, whatever. You know how we always hype or praise Frank Lampard for, everybody always says he was the hardest trainer and he was the first one in the training ground and the last one out. And the same is what the people at Manchester United say about Cristiano Ronaldo. That's what Erling Haaland does. You know, he told me you could go to the training ground at 8 p.m., 8 a.m., doesn't matter. Half the time, he was the only guy there. Sometimes no physios were there. Sometimes no coaches were there. Just Erling Haaland stood there working in the gym, just taking balls and just smacking them into goals as hard as he could. And that's the type of guy he seems to me, at least. I know people have tried to, paint it in direction, he's a bad character. But to me, he's just maybe a little like Ronaldo, just so obsessed with getting better and being as good as he possibly can be. And I've sometimes personally felt that that's maybe sometimes what Chelsea lack, to be consistently at this very highest level, rather than do what we did for the last decade, where we have this fantastic season, win the Premier League, win the Champions League like we did this season, like we did 2012, and then have the 2 years where we were great, but then drop it again, and then come 5th, and come 10th, and come whatever 4th, right? To not kind of have this spite to do it every year, and I don't know. I want to get back to that, and I feel like not too many, but a couple of characters that are just so crazy obsessed with winning and being as great as they can be is kind of what could help us get to that direction again. Obviously, just having a good enough squad and a good enough manager obviously plays equally as big of a part in that. But I still think it's an important one. And the one last thing I want to say on this former Norwegian footballer, and Jan, who obviously spoke about this yesterday, was kind of one of the first ones that really, I'm not going to say broke the news, but spoke about it yesterday. Well, he is good friends with the Haaland family in the first place. Like when Salzburg played at Liverpool, he was sat with Haaland's dad and Gary Neville and somebody else of Haaland's family. They were sat on a table just like talking like friends. So like if you're friends with the family and you say something like that, there's two options of why he could then say something like that publicly. Either you want to push a certain, agenda is maybe the wrong word, but push a certain story out there, or at least and wouldn't say something that goes against what they want you to say, if that makes sense. So that's all I wanted to share on that. Basically, Haaland isn't as much of a prick as people paint him out to be. Yes, he expects everyone to work as hard as he does, but is that something we'd complain about? I don't know. How do you see that, Dan? Like, is that a bad thing? Someone that just works bloody hard and, some people might get a bit, put off by someone being so obsessive about being great.
No, we need players like that, right? That we had 4 or 5 of them players in JT, Ashley Cole, Lampard, Didier Drogba, right? Drogba was very much like that when he played, always demanding the best. I think someone in our current squad like that is Azpilicueta. He demands everybody 100%, and even Mason Mount. I know Mason's young, but if you see Mason on the field when you watch him play, he's always screaming at his teammates to do more and to give more. So you need players like that in the squad for sure. And what I will say is with Haaland, he's I don't know anything about him personally. I've not heard anything about him personally. He just seems like a kid who's very determined and wants to win, and we need that. And one thing I'll say about your point on success, the mistake we've made in the past is we've spent loads of money, we've won something, and then we've kind of relied on that squad to keep going, and we haven't really topped up that squad. We haven't improved when we're at the top. And the best teams in the world improve whilst they're still at the top. They don't wait for themselves to go down to improve again and go back up. You see Man City, right? They win the league by 20 points and then they go out and buy 3 more superstars. They're at the top and that's how they stay at the top. Whereas Chelsea, we buy 5 superstars, we drop down. We buy 5 superstars, we drop down. So I think Chelsea are learning from their mistake, and that's why they're being so aggressive with their pursuits of their number 1 targets, because we're at the top now, we've got to stay at the top. And they're also learning from their mistakes in terms of they're pursuing their number 1 and not settling for target 2, target 3. And I know there's a guy on the chat right here who's asked me this question 20 times, so I'll answer it now. Venkatesh Ragafan has asked, if we go for Haaland, does that mean no for Rice? No, it doesn't. The club still want Declan Rice. Declan Rice is still number 1 target in the DM role. The only way we get him, though, is if we sell players in the midfield, period. We won't get him. If we keep Jorginho, it's 99% sure we won't get Declan Rice, pretty much. That's as transparent as I can be with it.
That's interesting to take it back to somebody else. Well, I'm sure we'll get round back to Haaland, and then I'll touch in the super chat in a second as well. So you think it needs to be in that area where we get the money from, rather than selling, I don't know, Emerson and Alonso and Tammy, and get the funds that way for someone like Rice, but keeping Jorginho and Rice, if that makes sense.
It's not, money's obviously the biggest point, but it's also squad balance too, right? We do have a lot of centre midfielders, and Declan Rice takes Jorginho's spot, right? And Declan Rice isn't going to come in and sit on the bench, and Jorginho's not going to sit on the bench the whole season either. So we know for a fact, 110% possible that the reason we didn't sign Declan Rice last transfer window is because we didn't get rid of Jorginho. That's 110%.
How much money do we want for Jorginho? Do you know that?
40, 50 million, which
I said that. Alex Goldberg told me I'm crazy when I said 40, 50 million is what you need to get for Jorginho.
We just won the Champions.
How much did he think?
Huh?
How much did he think he was worth?
Oh, no more than 35, Goldberg. And Matisse kind of didn't 100% disagree either, which I was very confused about.
Mad. All right. Fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, I would personally take 30, 35, but this is Chelsea. Chelsea are not going to take 30, 35 for someone they paid that much money for who just won the Champions League and has been playing. So, I mean, you could do all sorts of crazy deals, right? Like we said, like you can take 30 up front, you know, and a lot of the Italian clubs like them kind of deals, right? That's why, you know, AC Milan, I know they're going to pay it now for Tomori, but Chelsea was smart, right? And they put that 28 and it has to be 28 because I don't think Chelsea actually thought they were going to do it. And they are going to do it. Italian teams don't like really spending much money up front. So it could be that case. You know, you put 30 down and do 20 over a few years. That might be a thing. But yeah, Chelsea needs to get rid of Jorginho or Kovacic, which is unlikely. It's more Jorginho if they want to get Declan Rice. If not, they'll go for maybe someone cheaper. But Declan Rice is still definitely number one.
Fair. And before I give it over to Lewis, because my point to this has been, I think if we want to seriously challenge City next season already, I think it's a lot to ask from Rice to put all that DM pressure on just him. I think we're in a better, obviously financially is a different aspect, but in terms of just squad-wise, I think we're in a better position if we get Rice, play him. But, you know, the kid's, 21, 22, whatever he is. And then you have a Jorginho there, almost like what Jorginho was when Billy started playing under Frank, where you bring him on for the last 10 of a game, last 15 of a game, see a game out, he'll get games. We play 60 games next season. Even Declan Rice at 22 probably can't play all 60 games. Do you know what I mean? And then would I rather have, you know, or if he picks up an injury, would I rather have Jorginho there or would I rather have to rely on them Billy Gilmore? I just feel like if we want to challenge City, we need to not only have ability, but also a little bit of experience in key areas and not overdo it with young players if we really want to challenge City, because Champions League is amazing, but that's 13 games, not 38. It's much more difficult to keep it up for 38 games than it is for 13 games, arguably. Just as a last thing before I take it to Lewis, do you think that's a fair point, Dan?
You just repeat that one more time, please.
Basically, that if we have Jorginho and Rice, it's a lot of pressure to put on just Rice and get rid of Jorginho.
Yeah,
and having Jorginho about that experience about if we seriously want to challenge City for the league next season already.
Yeah, I mean, both of them in that midfield just won't work, right? They're similar, but they're not similar in a way. And like I said earlier, Jorginho will want to play every minute of every game. Declan Rice has played every minute of every Premier League game for God knows how long now, so he's not coming to sit on the bench. He's ready made to play in our team. So yeah, no, it just doesn't work. It doesn't work squad balance. It doesn't work financially. It doesn't work. Within anything, it just doesn't work. So yeah, it's definitely. I know it doesn't. I know football's not black and white, but if anything like that can be black and white, it would be. Jorginho out, Rice in, or not. Or you get someone younger, right, who you can develop in. You can get Jorginho to develop. Jorginho will be gone eventually. It's not if, it's when. You know, so the club have two options. Do they get rid of him now on a high, if they can, and get Rice in now? Or do they keep Jorginho for another year or two, get someone younger in who can, you know, be developed, can be nurtured by Jorginho, and then you've got a developed player in 2 years ready to play. So that's the choice, right? But what I will say is Chelsea still like Declan Rice, the board still like him. He's still number one. So but you got to pay up for him. You got to pay up. And what I've said on a lot of streams, and I'll say it again, the best thing for those who want Declan Rice at Chelsea, the best thing that can happen is City or Man United putting a bid for Declan Rice, because that will wake Chelsea up big time.
It might well do. It might well do. To take it back to you, Lewis, obviously we have this super chat that I've had on the screen for a minute already. By Himanshu, sorry if I butchered your name, basically asking, should Chelsea go for Hakimi or they go with Traore? Now, again, I've discussed this to some extent with Matisse and Goldberg the other day. Matisse is a big, advocate of sticking to the same formation. And then you could certainly argue that we need a right wing back, especially if it does become the case where Reece James is regularly used as a right centre-back option rather than just a wing-back, because then who is our only real wing-back? Well, no one, actually, because is Callum Hudson-Odoi a real wing-back? Probably not. Is Azpilicueta a real wing-back? Probably not. And if we're playing the only type of kind of real wing-back in Reece James at right centre-back, well, then we certainly need a wing-back. But for me, getting Adama Traore is a big L. I don't know if you guys agree, but we already have Werner who can't finish anything. I don't need another one, honestly. So, obviously, big money, sure. But if someone gave me the choice between Hakimi and Traore, it has to be Hakimi for me. How do you see that, Lewis?
Well, in terms of quality, I mean, Hakimi is well clear of Traore. I completely understand that. it depends on what our aims are for the summer. Like, if we end up spending 150 million on Erling Haaland, we're gonna have to be a bit more frugal with the rest of the spending around the window. And Adama Traore at right wing back isn't really as terrible of an option as people would make him out to be. Like, I guess end product does stink, but like with Wolves, he's one of their main attacking threats. So you can stick 2 players on him, and you can make it that much harder for him, and you can wipe out the. No, but this is the thing. This is Wolves. When it's Chelsea, where you got so much more threat around the entirety of the pitch, you can't really focus on an Adama Traore, which means he can really be used to the best of his abilities. And I'm going to bring up this chart that I had up here a few days ago. And this is the most take-ons completed by zone this season. And look, Adama Traore in the attacking positions for a right wing back, he's the top in the top 5 leagues for this season, regardless. And that's still with how poor or how held back he's been this season, with him being one of the main threats for Wolves. So, as an attacking option, if he's on the cheap, it's not really the worst of options for us, because he'll be a lot more free. He'll have a lot more freedom to do what he wants to do at Chelsea compared to Wolves. And I think if you had him and Reece James both running at a left back, like, imagine having to deal with the pair of them on the right hand side. That would be ridiculous. Adama Traore obviously needs to improve his end product. I completely understand that. But as a bench option, he'd be decent for us as well. All depends on the price tag for me. If we could get Traore on the cheap, it's not really as bad of a deal as people make it out to be. Damn. I don't even know what happened there. I think his internet crashed out. Yeah.
Lewis G hosting AC prop immediately.
My bad.
Yeah, let's.
What were you going to do? What were you going to do?
Turn this into an AC stream, man. Fuck's sake. Yeah. Cheaper option, it works for us. I think it'd be a decent option. But Hakimi is levels clear. We don't need to have the debate over who's better, because we all know Hakimi's better. He's better on both feet, better centrally, more comfortable on the ball. So he's a really deadly finisher from the right-hand side as well. And we've already said both footed, so he can finish with either foot as well. So if we could go for Hakimi, definitely go for him. If we're trying to be more frugal with our spending, go for Traore. It's fine.
I just think if we get Traore, Reece James needs to remain the main right wing back. And that, in my opinion, means we also need a centre-back. Or, I guess, push Gueye up to the first team. But that is obviously always comes with a bit of a risk taking someone from the Championship. I know we did it with Mount. I get that, sure. But not everybody's Mason Mount. People also need to understand that. So if we want to play Reece James right centre-back, then I think we need a starting right wing-back. And then Traore ain't it. So I think that's where the whole decision between them two comes from. Before we take it to the next super chat, Dan, just quickly, Hakimi, Traore, what's your thoughts on those two? Is there even anything to those stories, or?
Don't see us get a Hakimi. Don't see it at all. I think another team needs him more than us, and they'll pay more than us to get him. Traore, yeah, like Lewis said, I don't need to. Good player, offers a good different dimension, but I'd only get him if we're getting him on the cheap. Like I was saying, have we completely given up on Callum Hudson-Odoi playing right wing back? I'm not sure. I guess we'll see in pre-season, right? But yeah, I don't know.
No, I wasn't going to say I've given up on him. I just think he'd be much better off in a different position to right wing back. I feel like we hold him back a bit more there. Yeah,
no, I don't think he is a right wing back. I'm just not sure if Tuchel's experiment is done yet or not, because I know Tuchel likes him, is trying to get him more in the team. He just didn't do it this year because Tuchel had to win, right? And let's be honest, Cal wasn't in the top 11, really.
It is what it is.
Yeah, it is what it is. We had to get results. So I think pre-season will be interesting for Cal in terms of where he plays and how he gets more minutes. But yeah, Traore, only on the cheap. Anything more than, it doesn't really, it's not my money, but anything more than 20, 25 mil, I think I'm not sure what we're doing there.
Yeah, I agree. That's a similar price tag for me too.
100%. And for me, it's only like the fact that we're even linked with him, and I'll ask you this now, Dan, says to me we are at least seriously considering a back three still being our main formation next year. Do you know whether Tuchel wants or would prefer to play a back four, as long as I presume he needs a more of a proper DM to make that happen? But presuming we get Rice, do you see it more likely that we switch to a 4 rather than sticking with the back three?
Well, we know he's done back four stuff in training this year.
Yeah.
He's really experimenting with the back four. in training in anticipation of having that if we needed it this year, and also looking at next year. And yeah, the DM makes a huge difference, right? If he gets his DM and he gets his number one DM, then I think the back four becomes more prevalent. I think we'll play both. I think in pre-season and in training, he'll do both this year. And it will completely depend on the squad, how the squad looks, right? Right now, we're still set out to play in the back three. It's better to play in the back three. So signings dictate that and change that, then great. But you've got to also think of not just defenders, but also forwards, right? If we do get Haaland, do we put Haaland and then Werner up top? If so, then you're still looking at that, maybe three at the back, right? You could put Haaland up top on his own and putting two wingers around him, then maybe you're looking at a back four. It's way too early, way too difficult to kind of anticipate what we're going to play next year. But we do know that Tuchel has experimented with a back four before. And our squad is currently built for a back three. So it's going to definitely depend on recruitment, for sure. It's going to be huge on that. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see both in pre-season.
Yeah, that's fair. I think, and just as a last point, because you touched on pre-season there, and worried is maybe the wrong word, but I am slightly worried as to how much importance people give to pre-season, because I think, don't forget, we have the most players of anybody, of any club at the Euros, and the Premier League season only starts a month after the Euros final. Obviously, we won't have all of those players in the final. I get that. But most of those will only, like, people say, oh, we didn't have a pre-season last year. Last season, we had about 10 days, 2 weeks of pre-season. For the majority of the squad, it won't be any more of that this season. Just to clear that up. During a big tournament season, summer pre-season just ain't really a big thing. We have a Super Cup as well, so we don't even have this, at least full weeks between games that you usually have for the first 3 weeks of the season. We don't even have that every week. Like, the whole pre-season thing is sadly not as much of a huge thing as we were all kind of hoping for. But I do want to get to the super chat here by Nicholas saying, if we sign Haaland and Rice, but sell Hudson-Odoi, Abraham, and loan out Billy Gilmore to raise funds and create space, what does that say about our club?
We're not Arsenal.
Go on.
It says we're not Arsenal.
What he said.
I was going to say
as long as if we can switch selling Hudson-Odoi to loan, I'm fine with all of that.
I mean, that
would suit me perfectly.
For me, Callum is like, either he stays or he's sold. A loan isn't really a thing. Like, he's too big of a name.
I'd rather he stayed, but like, if we're saying about him being out of the club for next season, I'd rather he go out on loan to a club that would play him every season and he can get some confidence, because he would still come back a much better player and he'd still end up having more game time than he would with us.
Oh, he would, but I don't think him and his team would accept a loan to then come back. The only way I see a loan is with at least an option, if not an obligation, to buy at the end of the loan. It just
like, if we loaned him to Dortmund for a year or two, I feel like that would be great for him.
But he would never come back, I don't think.
Who's to say he wouldn't?
We see the fact he put in a transfer request to go to Bayern Munich. He's not fussed about a loan. Oh, I need to develop for Chelsea. I like him. Like, I'm not trying to diss him as his personality at all. We've learned recently that he wants to stay and fight for his spot. Dan can say in a minute whether that's, in his opinion, true or not. But he just doesn't seem like the guy with how big his name is, with his credibility and what he's done already. He's too far to get a loan for me. But how's that for you, Dan? Is this Callum a loan without an option / obligation to buy a thing?
Just on the transfer request thing, number one, his family are his agents and his family take care of him. So just take that into account, number one. And number two, with a transfer request, yeah, he wanted to go and play, but he was always wanting to stay at Chelsea, number one choice. That was a financial decision just as much as a playing decision. Like, he was basically forcing Chelsea's hand and he ended up getting a big new deal out of it. So, just, he wanted to play and he would have gone to Bayern Munich, but he was always, his number one choice was always to stay at Chelsea, and his number one choice is to stay at Chelsea now. So
yeah, I heard Simon Phillips report the same thing as well. That's what I was going to say.
Simon, I mean, I know I work with him, so I'm going to be biased a little bit, but Simon's got the best source you could probably have on Callum Hudson-Odoi. Fact. Like, if you can scroll back 5 years of Callum Hudson-Odoi news with Simon, he hasn't got anything wrong. And I won't say that about everything, but Callum Hudson-Odoi, he knows it 100%. So
I'm going to keep down the notes, so say.
There you go.
Anytime he says something about Hudson-Odoi,
There's going to be a tree for Lewis in the next years.
Exactly.
No, but honestly, no, his cow source is legit. So he's probably better to answer this than I am. But Callum Hudson-Odoi loan. Yeah, no. The loan to Dortmund makes sense maybe for him in terms of playing time and experimenting. And obviously it went well for Sancho and whatnot. Even though Chelsea, I don't think will get Sancho. I think Sancho's going United.
Especially if we get Haaland. Do you think they could actually sell both? Or is it like who strikes first?
This is something I put on my Twitter yesterday. I've actually spoke to a couple of people on Twitter, like the big boys, should we say, about this. And I've asked them the same question. And they find it very hard to believe. Both the people, the two I asked just this question said, I don't think so. Like they find it hard to believe that they can sell both. So that's why I put on my Twitter, like kind of a hint who they're going to sell first. You know,
well, so then Chelsea get a move on and make our summer a little bit less stressful because Kai took a long time. So let's get Haaland done quicker.
Gotcha. Yeah. So, I mean, Sancho is closer because it's an easier deal to do, right? But Dortmund get more money from Haaland. So that's Dortmund, right? But Callum Hudson-Odoi, yeah, no, he's got to have a year. He's got to have a big year this year. Otherwise, I'm over it. I'll be honest. I'm really over it.
Fair play. I mean, obviously there have been reports today that apparently Bayern are interested again. Do you see him? Do you see us selling him as a real option? You said already that Tuchel likes him. Do the board want to sell him? Like, I don't know. To me, it seems difficult. I don't think we have enough wingers to sell him this summer when we're unlikely to sign a winger, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, ideal world, Chelsea will keep him, and ideally he'd stay at Chelsea. But like anybody, everyone's got a price, right? If Bayern Munich had paid 10 more million, Chelsea probably would have sold him back then. So, yeah, I think if they come in with a massive bid, which I don't think they will, but if they did, at this point you've got to start looking at it. But yeah, then you've got to be careful, right? Because ZX being linked away, Sancho goes to United. There's not many options out there, so you've got to be careful.
That's my point. That's exactly it. And otherwise, to get back to the super chat, I mean, yeah, like both of these guys said, we're not Arsenal. You know, our academy is there for two reasons: to the crop of the whatever the word is, the best of the best, make it to the first team. The rest be used to fund us getting other superstars. That's the whole idea of the academy. You know, the very best we actually use, and the other ones we sell. We don't want to ruin their whole careers and have them sit on the bench or the stands for the next 10 years of their career. That's not how football works. These guys want to play football. You know, they wouldn't have made it this far if they didn't have the drive to be professionals and, you know, be successful, whether that's here or elsewhere. But you know, it won't necessarily work out like that. And just before we take it to like more speculative talk, I suppose, what about, like, obviously the whole Giroud signed a contract extension, or was Chelsea used that option on his contract back in April, but we only found out now. That's my opinion, and I'll ask you, Dan, and then you, Lewis, as well, if you agree on this. For me, this is, okay, we took that option just in case we can't get any of Haaland, Lukaku, whoever else. And just in case we need to go into next season with Havertz, Werner, Giroud, and then try again for a top striker next season, because we don't want to be doing what we did for the last 5 years where we signed these B-Tech options when we can't get our first choice. That's what I took from it. But if we do get, say, Haaland, we will agree to let Giroud go to AC Milan. But if we don't, we will make him stay, if that makes sense. Do you see that as a reasonable explanation of this contract extension, or were you surprised by the contract extension, Dan?
No. We heard whispers of it like before. Like we've already heard whispers that the Thiago Silva deal was signed a lot longer before it actually came out. It was signed. So yeah, we definitely heard whispers, and it was pretty inevitable it was going to happen. You know, in terms of if you know kind of how Chelsea operate and how Marina operates, and it was always kind of thing. Yeah, again, ideally Giroud leaves, right? Giroud gets his move that he wants to go play more, and he's coming towards the end of his career. But Chelsea are very aware that if they don't get the number one target, that Giroud still provides a good option for them, right? And if he's contracted to the club, and he has to stay, he will stay. And Giroud will be okay with that in respect of he's a professional, right? And he'll get his job done. We've seen that in the past. But I think ideally for all parties, we get our number one striker, and then he leaves and goes to play. But football is not always ideal.
No, exactly. Lewis, what about you? Do Do you think Giroud will actually stay, or do you think it's just a way of making money and having a bit of a, I suppose, a safeguard in case we don't get who we actually want?
It could be a bit of both, to be honest. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if this is a way for Chelsea to just get an extra 5 or 10 million out of him. And it would be really smart business if that was the case, and if they had an agreement of something similar to that. But I also feel like it would have already happened by now. Maybe it's happened a bit earlier than I'm giving it credit for. So maybe we still just need to give it a bit of time. But I could see him stay for another season. I mean, he's still shown this season that he's a good option when used sparingly. And I wouldn't be against keeping him for one more year as a third-choice striker. I've said, like, you won't find a better third-choice striker than Olivier Giroud. So if he wants to stay for another year, so be it. Let him go and get the Premier League title and just finish off the collection of trophies that he's won in England. But it all depends on what he wants. He's got a 1-year extension now, so he can stay if he wants to. I can understand if he wanted to leave. But if he didn't want to either, that would be perfect as well. Like, I'm just happy with any scenario with Olivier Giroud right now. If he leaves on a high. If he stays, perfect. We've got 1 more year of Giroud.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I've always said this about Giroud. Is like, I'm not his biggest fan. People know this. But obviously, we all knew that he always wanted to still play for France, right? And that's why he wanted to play more. And that's why he was maybe looking at moves, however long ago it was, whether it was in January or last year. But personally, I'm like, now that they've actually called Benzema back, Giroud knows he's not going to start for France anymore regularly. Whether that's now in this Euros or whether it's in 18 months in the 2022 World Cup. He knows it's not going to happen. I don't know. I think he might be more okay with not playing as much now that Benzema is back in the French team, because no matter how much he plays, he's probably unlikely to be France's starter now, unless Benzema screws up again and they kick him out. But that's why I think he would be more okay, if that makes sense, to not play as much and be okay to stick around for be third choice strike. I don't know. Dan has shaken his head, so he doesn't seemingly agree. But for me, it's like, with Benzema, is he really going to have a chance to play regardless of how much he plays at club level?
I mean, France should be playing the go-kart, that's for sure. Scores more goals, helps the way they play. Benzema's unbelievable. He's had an absolute incredible year, right? But Giroud deserves more respect, for sure. I don't think he's Jesus like a lot of Chelsea fans do, but he definitely deserves a lot more respect, and people have short-term memories in football, that's for sure.
That is a fair point. Before I get to this super chat, because we didn't say that, Eddie, let me just quickly say, ladies and gentlemen, if you're watching, and we have over 550 nearly people watching, make sure you subscribe. That'd be massively appreciated. Smash that like button. We have nowhere near enough likes considering how many people we have watching. So smash the like button. Let's get to 300 likes right now. Go down below, smash the like button. Really helps me out. Pushes these videos out to more strangers, I suppose, and that's how us content creators grow. But to get to Eddie Blue super chat, I appreciate the donation though, saying, sorry, but if we ditch the likes of Gilmore, Gueye, Livramento, then we're idiots. They're potentially top players. I 100% agree, but we're not doing that. I mean, the super chat before said loan Billy Gilmore. Loan doesn't mean scrap him. To me, Billy Gilmore situation, Billy for me is the heir to Kovacic. Not a DM in my books, but a brilliant heir to Kovacic of this half box to box, half defensive, half offensive type player. I think he'd be absolutely fantastic at that. But realistically, probably won't get enough game time with us to develop into that as quickly as we'd love him to. So a good Premier League loan to the right team is perfect. And Gueye, I mean, and I'll let Lewis speak on this and Dan as well in a second. Gueye is in a championship. Give the guy a Prem loan, and then we can talk about him being in the first team the season after, for me.
Finally. Oh, my God. Do you know how many people saying bring him into the squad immediately? Like, come on, man. Let him go to a league club first. Literally just echoing what you're saying. Like, you're correct. I don't get why enough people don't think that. Like, he's had a brilliant season, but he ain't going to get a lot of game time if he comes to Chelsea anyway. So why would we bring him in just to warm the bench for a season and just stunt his development?
Exactly. And Livramento is certainly a backup option to be had for like right back, right wing back. But he's just in the under 18s or whatever it is, right? Like, he could probably do with a loan or two as well. Like, Mason Mount had a loan. Reece James had a loan. These guys all had a loan before they are what they are right now. It's unlikely to make it straight to this from the academy. But Dan, I mean, do you disagree on the Guay? Do you think he should be in the squad next season already?
I think he's the most likely out of all of them who could actually contribute and play. He's absolutely smashed it at Swansea. He's got all the attributes to be a Premier League defender. But anything less than being competitive, playing all the cup games and having a chance to start in the league, then maybe not. But he's definitely got the biggest chance, and Chelsea love him. The academy think he's like the best thing since sliced bread, and the board love him. So if anyone's got a chance of breaking in the first team, it would be him out of all of them. So it depends, right? If we lose Zuma, which is the most likely one to leave out of all of them, Thiago Silva gets a big injury. I know it's kind of daunting, but you've got to think about these things, right? And then you only have limited. It depends if we play 2 centre-backs or 3 centre-backs. If we play 3 at back next year, then we're going to need cover, right? So, yeah, Gui's definitely going to get a chance in pre-season to impress. The board likes him. Tuchel likes what he sees of him. So he'll get a chance, and then we'll see. But he should only be included if he's going to play. I agree. We can't stunt his growth. I think we maybe did that a little bit with Ampadu. Hence, he's struggling now.
Well, plus that Leipzig loan that really backfired on everybody.
Right, Livramento. He looks unbelievable, but too early. Needs to go play.
No, exactly. And as we kind of touched on centre backs a little bit there, obviously a few weeks, maybe months ago, it was kind of the scenario seemingly that, well, at least that's what was reported in some areas, right? That centre back was our first priority. I'm not sure whether that was ever true, but at least it seemed like we were interested in a centre back. Are we still interested in a centre back? And if we are, who is that? Because there's been so many names thrown around. Obviously, there was Upamecano. He went to Bayern Munich. There was Kanate. He went to Liverpool. Well, and then what? Obviously, there's Varane, who might be out there for a fairly cheap, considering what he's won, how old but still young he is. Like he's 28. Like he's at a great age considering what he's won. But is Varane without Ramos next to him? Who knows? But how do you see the whole centre back situation like that, Dan? Because you just touched on it. Guay is the most likely, but probably only if we don't sign the centre back. I would personally presume.
Yeah, no, we're still looking at centre backs, still being heavily scouted. There's a few options out there, the names that you've seen, right? In terms of Varane, I think that's a long shot. I've always said that, right? I think that's a long shot. I think that's a difficult deal to do. I think other clubs might pursue him heavily, harder than we need to, maybe Man United being one. But with that said, we're still looking at centre-backs. I think they anticipate one of our centre-backs leaving at least, as I said earlier. So, but it's just never been as much of a priority as a DM. DM's always been Tuchel. Tuchel wants a DM, 100%. Like, that is big for him. And the board are obsessed with getting and obviously Tuchel would love a forward too. And the board are obsessed with getting a forward. So they're your big two, right? And then you got the centre back, you got the winger, and then the wing back. Maybe they're the ones that are being linked, just kind of in the background. It's still very, very early days.
Exactly, but so there is, to your knowledge, also not this one name centre back where you're like, if we do sign one, it's probably him.
I mean, Chelsea's scouting network is so extensive, right? Like it's never. Like Chelsea have 2, 3, 4 targets in every position, right? So it's not always going to be this to this to that to that. It's that's why constant communication happens, right? Because things can change. He might be available, then he might not be. He might cost this much, and all of a sudden he costs this much. So the Euros will probably play a part as well, right? Good Euros, bad Euros will play a part with some people. So and Chelsea won't do their business till late. I know Chelsea people would love to think that we're going to do Haaland tomorrow. It's not going to happen. Chelsea always take their time. They're extensive in their negotiations, and they'll wait an extra day, an extra week if that means they get a better deal. They'll do it. So,
no, exactly. Obviously, ladies and gentlemen, if you do want us to discuss certain individual players that we might not have discussed yet, do use the super chat function to make sure that I can highlight it when we do discuss it, so it makes more sense to everybody. Of course, always supports the channel, so I appreciate that. One point that I want to put to both of you, and I'll actually go with Lewis first before Dan tells us that is ludicrous. So my idea basically would be get rid of Alonso and Emerson, and then nick either Van Aanholt or Bertrand on a free, and then solve this whole left back problem. Just get one who's all right with being backup, who knows for a fact is going to be backup. Get money for Emerson and Alonso, and obviously Van Aanholt and Ryan Bertrand are currently free agents, if I'm not mistaken. Obviously, Bertrand might have things, done somewhere. I don't know, but ideally, that would be my idea. I would love that. Would that be a thing? You'd be a fan of, Lewis? Get a Van Aanholt or Bertrand, and then making money on both Emerson and Alonso.
Yep. Like, they're both going to be depth signings anyway, so go for it. Emerson's only really a bench option for me, so there won't really be much change there. Alonso, I've already said, don't really rate him too much, but he's had a good season. Again, we can just end it on a good note. It is what it is. Yeah, like, left backs, we have Ben Chilwell. He's our long-term option. We have Ian Maatson as a youth prospect coming through as well. One of the two would be fine. Like, Ryan Bertrand's having interest from Arsenal and a few other clubs as well, so it might not be him. But I haven't heard any clubs interested in Van Aanholt yet. That might be for a reason in itself. That could be a bit of a red flag. But if we were to go for one of them on the free and sell off the other two, that would be fine by me for the season.
Fair, Dan. Is that an option even? Like, is that... Well, not necessarily have Chelsea considered it, but... Is that a thing? Could we sell both Emerson and Alonso? And what do we do then? Because then we clearly need a left back.
Chelsea won't sell them two until they have someone lined up first. And I don't see Patrick Van Aanholt coming back to Chelsea to sit on the bench. Guy's flamboyant, guy's a character. Guy left Chelsea in the first place to go play. Still relatively, not young, but, he's got a lot of playing time in him still. And he won't want to come back and sit on the bench, I don't think. I think Ryan Bertrand's probably more of your option for that. But Chelsea won't sell Alonso and Emerson until they have something else lined up. And Ian Maatson, he's great potential, but he's not ready to be our second choice yet. So Chelsea will have to be doing... I know they've scouted left backs and they've looked at Ryan Bertrand for sure. We know that. But in terms of, is that the priority right now? No. So that might take a little bit of a while, but Emerson will be the first one sold unless something crazy comes in for Alonso. But Emerson's definitely the one they want to sell more. He's obviously more lucrative for a lot more teams, right? To sign Emerson. But it's just the money.
Yeah, no, it's the money. He's a bit younger as well, if I'm not mistaken. So, but my problem with that again is, so if Chilwell is injured, then our only option is playing a back three, because we all know Alonso is not capable of playing in a back four properly. So that again is why I'm not a fan of this, selling Emerson but keeping Alonso as this back, because I'm like, well, great, then we can't play a back four if Chilwell needs to be rested or is injured. To me, I know Dan will say, oh, but everyone is decent and blah, 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 we can't do it. Yeah, but we don't want this, right? Do we? We don't want Alonso left back. Let's be honest with ourselves, right? But just before I get to... Before I want to touch on the goalkeeping situation with you, Dan, and Lewis, obviously, as well. Lewis, what do you make of this? Just a random topic. What do you make of the fact that Nuno from Wolves seems to be going to Palace? Why did he leave Wolves in the first place? Like, what?
Oh, Nuno. I don't even know why he left Wolves. I think it was because they had a bad season, but I swear the Jimenez injury was a big factor in that. So I thought they'd have a bit of a come-up next season. But he's already gone. I don't know. Maybe he feels like he's not having the same influence on the squad like he used to. I really don't know, but for some reason he thinks Palace is the way forward. Go for it, I guess. But yeah, I ain't got a clue out this one. Him leaving came out of left field, and him signing for Crystal Palace came out of left field too. It was only a month ago before it was going to be Lampard.
That's true. It's true. I kind of forgot about that. Yeah. I mean, the Nuno one is weird to me. Like, I swear 2 weeks ago, he was linked with both the Real Madrid and the Tottenham job. Out of nowhere, he's going to Palace.
Nuno?
Yeah.
Linked to the Real
Madrid job the Madrid one wasn't a serious one. That's just probably what people speculated about.
Okay,
but the Tottenham one was a thing. I'm like, how's it going from Tottenham to Palace? I mean, I know we take the piss out of Tottenham, but, Palace is a whole different story. But to get to the goalkeeping situation, I want to discuss that quickly. Obviously, Kepa Arrizabalaga has been called up into this Spain bubble thingy because Busquets has obviously picked up the C words, and now no one knows whether Spain will be able to play at the Euros. So now they've basically called up all the players they didn't call up yet to just make sure that they have a squad, which Kepa has been included in. I wonder if Ramos has been included in that squad or whether he told them to F off. I don't know. But Caballero is obviously leaving. And I'll ask you this now, Dan. Are we trying to sell Kepa? And if we are, we do need a backup. And I've touched on this with the other day. Mendy is going to be gone for like 6 weeks to 2 months next season, in the middle of the season for the African Cup of Nations. So we need a serious backup. We don't need like a bloody Ben Foster. Do you know what I mean? Like we need an actual backup option. So if we're going to sell Kepa,
don't disrespect Ben Foster. That boy is a legend. Nah,
but he's been replaced by an Austrian goalkeeper at Watford. I can't rate him anymore.
Yeah, so the goalkeeper thing is, Chelsea are definitely active in that space. They've scouted, again, a few goalkeepers. They've looked at Romero and a couple of others, from what I've been told. But, they're trying to sell Kepa, right? But that's probably just as hard as signing Haaland, trying to sell Kepa. Like, honestly, that is tough. With the wage packet, with who's going to be able to afford him, who wants to subsidise his wages, who's going to include Chelsea don't want to just loan in. They want to try and loan in with an option or a obligation to buy. I mean, who's signing up for that deal at this point in this market, right? So that's difficult. So Chelsea will. I mean, again, for everybody ideal, then Kepa would leave. Chelsea would get rid of him for money, but again, it's so difficult, right? So there could be a world where he stays, but I think ideally everyone would like to part ways, but it's just so difficult to sell Kepa. So difficult. But Chelsea are looking at, of course, third choice goalkeeper, sorry. And free agents are definitely the first point of call they're looking at.
So, but if we do get rid of Kepa, right? We need, like I said, we know now already, we will need a goalkeeper for nearly 2 months. Like, we can't just get anybody at this point now, can we?
So if we get rid of Kepa, then we'll be looking at probably a higher rated goalkeeper than Sergio Romero's not bad, but Ben Foster maybe. We wouldn't be looking at Rob Green as such. We probably would look for like a cheap, 10, 15, 20 million second choice
Areola or Sam Johnston or whatever.
Yeah, something like that. Someone who's not going to cost too much, but is obviously decent to play second choice. So but that obviously depends on Kepa. Everything depends on Kepa with that one for sure.
Well, what's your view on PSG getting Donnarumma but keeping Navas? It's a bit weird, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it's definitely interesting. That tells me that they think Navas is kind of dwindling down a little bit because obviously Donnarumma is gonna play, or he's gonna want to play, right? So I do wonder if PSG will make Donnarumma earn it and they'll start Navas and make Donnarumma come in and earn it, or if they're just going to make that statement and start Donnarumma immediately. It just comes across right that PSG have got more money than sense, and they're just, because they can, they're just splashing everywhere, right? I mean, they're paying Gini Wijnaldum double what Barcelona are willing to pay just to get him.
Yeah.
Right?
Although I wonder what the Barca offer was, because we know they're screwed and skint. So maybe that offer was like 100K. So double isn't even crazy.
No, they're probably not paying him overly. I would anticipate they're not paying him more than 250 grand a week. I wouldn't think so, right? For Gini, I mean, he's a great player. I actually rate him highly. I think he's fantastic, but he's not a superstar, right? So I doubt they're paying him that much. I think Barca's offer probably was a little bit low because they thought they were going to get him anyway, right? They thought the Koeman partnership would just be an automatic guarantee, right? So I doubt they're paying that, but PSG they're playing FIFA at this point, right? So
yeah. They really are. It's a funny one. I just want to comment on something that I've seen in the chat. People talking about Daka, the striker from Rebel Salzburg, who, of course, I think yesterday, or was it 2 days ago, retweeted some sort of tweet that linked him to Chelsea, which obviously people took in all sorts of context. Again, a good friend of mine does work for Salzburg, and he actually texted him about this. Not sure if I'm allowed to say this, but I will anyway. So, off we go. He basically texted him saying, well, what was that about? And he just said, no, he's just honoured that he's linked with a club like Chelsea, hence why he was happy, hence why he retweeted it rather than, he's actually coming to Chelsea. So, don't make too much out of the whole Daka retweeting a tweet. He's a good player, young player in the Bundesliga, but Austrian Bundesliga, mind you, whether he has it to ever play for a club like Chelsea, I don't know. And my friend at Salzburg doesn't know either. Go on.
Someone in the chat, right, just said, who would want to be our third choice goalie? Matt, I honestly think third choice goalie at a Premier League club is the best job in the world.
Hey, if they want to sign me up, I'm happy.
Honestly, imagine that. just train every day, eat what you want, get paid mega bucks, never play. Oh my God, that's the job. That is the job.
That honestly, basically means rather than paying for a gym membership, that you're being paid to go to the gym.
Honestly.
And who knows? You might get a game.
Yeah, exactly. You might get an FA Cup third round. Bosh, playing the FA Cup third round. Thanks for having me.
There you go. No, exactly.
That is the job. Honestly, who would want to be? You can sign up 10 million people to do that. Trust me. There's a lot of goalkeepers out there who would love to be our third choice goalie. Ask Rob Green. He had a great time.
He had a great time, yeah, and made his entire career post-football just because he came to us. He would have halved the punditry jobs if he didn't play for Chelsea for a year.
Exactly, and that moment in Baku, right, the hero in Baku, that is his career right there, and he knows it. He loves it.
Exactly. He's now more known for
European trophies of doing it.
Exactly, Turnbull, Champions League winner, Bosh.
Still won more than Harry Kane, do you know what I mean? And he also has the weirdest fingers I've ever seen anybody have. But a goalkeeping job is not an easy one, I suppose. But you touched on the whole third goalkeeper just quickly. Are we considering a Jamie Cummings or whatever being that, or are we going to bring some old dude in to do that job?
No, Chelsea. Yeah, they're keeping their eyes on. You got Ziga as well, right? Or Zyga, don't know how you say it. Whatever. Yeah, no, there's definitely that option for sure. Obviously, we just released Jamal Blackman. He's been there for a long time, so it obviously won't be him. Yeah. But yeah, no, they're definitely looking at it. Again, it's not a priority. There's only so many deals you can do at one time. You can scout at the same time, right? They've got departments and they've got people always scouting, right, and always looking. But in terms of actually negotiating deals, right, there's only so much you can do at a time. And third choice, second choice goalkeeper is definitely not a priority right now, and neither is centre back right now. It's definitely Haaland. And seeing if they can sell players. Selling players is taking up a lot of their energy. I know that for sure. They're actively working on that. There's a big team working on trying to get rid of as many players as we can.
Can you, and I'm sorry, Lois, I'm not getting you involved as much as I usually do. Can you shed a little bit of light, Dan? Because that's one thing. I've done this type of thing for a long time. I do know more than most people how things work. But how does a team like you just touched on go about trying to sell a player? Is it like I don't know, putting something on eBay and waiting for a bid, or how do you go about selling someone? Do you just knock on everybody's doors? Hey, do you want it?
No, it's a good question. So the club will work with the agent and maybe let the agent know that look, there is a possibility that we could potentially let your client go, and then the agent will go out there, right, and they will pitch the field and say look, my client might be coming available for X amount. Right, and Chelsea will play a ballpark. Chelsea won't say it'll be 15 million, right? Because if Chelsea told them that, then they would negotiate it down to 12. So they would just kind of say, look, the client might be, this is what we're kind of thinking. Chelsea are also very incognito of a lot of that stuff, right? So maybe it isn't as transparent as other clubs, but that's typically how it will go. And then the agent will go out and do the guesswork. Hence why the agent circus of Haaland, of other teams, right? You see the agent always talking, Jorginho, agent always talking. There's a reason for that. That's their job, right? So Donnarumma too. So yeah, that's typically how it works. And then the club, depending on the relationship between the club and the player, the player goes in the office and it's a long-standing club member, right? Like Gary Cahill, for example, right? He was very transparent. Chelsea just said, look, yeah, you can go, So depending on that relationship as well, the club will tell the player, look, we can let you go, or we can let you go for this amount. Eden Hazard, another example, right? Mourinho constantly told him, look, if we get this, you can go. So then Hazard will go back with his agent and the agent will do the work. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, no, fair dues. So hopefully we can make that happen. Because the one last question I have on the Kepa thing, to take it back to that on goalkeepers, because the big question, I suppose, is we speak about the wage structure or the wage being a problem in getting rid of him. But I suppose then the question is, does he care more about the money or does he care more about playing? Because if he cared more about playing, he'd probably be okay with taking a wage cut. But if he doesn't want to take a wage cut, then he doesn't seem to be so fussed about not playing. Do you know what I mean?
Is this a specific person or in general?
Not just Kepa. Sorry, Kepa, yeah.
Oh, Kepa. Yeah, I mean, he's a little bit younger, right? So he might prioritize playing rather than money. If it's an older player, then money will obviously mean more to them, right? Because they're coming towards the end of their career. Footballers' careers are short. They get paid stupid money, right? So they're going to try and get as much money as possible. If you're a bit younger, you're going to have a career for a bit longer. You're going to earn that money anyway. But money means more to other people. There's no written rule, right? So like Oscar, he pretty much ruined his career in a way to go to China. and set up his family. But that's his priority. That's his choice. He's allowed to do that. I mean, a lot of people
he somehow still thinks he's coming back to Chelsea one day.
I know. I wish I actually loved him, so I wish he would. But yeah. So everyone's priorities are different, right? If you depending on your background, yeah, he might have come from a really place in Brazil, and he knows he can set up his family for generations to come, and that's his priority rather than winning the Ballon d'Or or winning the Champions League. And that's okay. There's no right and wrong. So it definitely depends on the individual. I would say Kepa's probably more looking at the playing. But at the same time, boys, if you were paid 200 grand a week, right, and someone was offering you 100, are you going to be jumping on that quickly? Probably not, right?
No. Especially when you're still... How long does he have left on his contract? 4 years left on his bloody contract because we gave him a 7-year contract when we signed him. I mean...
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like that's a bit of a madness. But just to as a last topic to bring it back, almost in a circle to where we began on the whole Erling Haaland topic, and I'll ask you that, Lewis. If we get Haaland, how do you see? Because presumably one of the following will have to be left out. We can't probably start all of these guys, right? You have Havertz, you have Werner, you have Pulisic, you have Mount. Especially if we don't switch to a midfield 3. How are we going to line up if we have Haaland? Or how would you line up if we have Haaland, Lewis? Because, I don't know how we're going to fit all of these guys in.
For me, when Haaland improves his link-up play, I feel like we get more out of Timo Werner as a result. So in the second season, I'd like to see Werner and Haaland together. First season, I think you go Havertz on the right. You go
in what formation?
Same as last season. 3-4-2-1.
Yeah.
So I'd go Haaland up front, Havertz on the right, Mount on the left.
Okay.
Jorginho, Kante midfield. Unless we get a DM, of course, then we can interchange a bit more. Chilwell, Reece James, Christensen, Silva, Rudiger, Mendy. That would be my starting 11. Then we go and get the treble.
Notice how he snuck Christensen in there. Snuck him in.
He's stapled this spot. Let me not get into it. Although, to be honest, me and Jen been arguing about it for months because we've been saying if we get Hakimi or Traore, suddenly it makes it a bit sticky because we could end up come on the AC yard. Let's go. There's a lot more competition for that right centre back spot if we get a right wing back because suddenly you got Christensen, Reece James, and you've got Azpilicueta all fighting for that spot. So it does make it a bit stickier, but I still think Reece James would be a great right wing back just once he adjusts the position a little bit more. I'm not throwing out there like it's not going to work out. I just think him coming back from injury and trusting his body again after coming back numerous times and coming back at the wrong time because he was being overplayed, like the Arsenal game, the Leicester City match before Lampard got sacked. I feel like that kind of threw him off a little bit and he was just getting back into trusting his body again, which is why he started a bit slow when we brought him back into the side. So I still don't think hope's lost with him the right wing-back position. I think you just got to give him a bit more time in the position.
I agree.
That's a fair shout. My concern is obviously if we stick to the formation, that's fair enough. I still don't think we will long term. And then I just don't see how, and I'll ask you, Mr. Coach Dan McCarthy, how can you possibly fit all of these guys in and who's the one that loses out? Because let's be honest, Mount will keep starting. So unless we change to a midfield 3, he will be one of the 10s, right? So, but do you want in a say it was a 4-2-2-2, right? And you had a front 2 of Haaland and Werner. Would you really want Mount and Havertz as your wide players? That seems like a little bit too little kind of agile players, too few dribblers, too few like one-on-one type players. So if you presume Mount starts as a 10, in my opinion, Havertz has to be the guy next to Haaland, so you can play a Pulisic or a Hudson-Odoi as the other kind of wide 10. But then Werner loses out. And are we going to realistically do that? I don't know. What's your well, first of all, how do you think we make them all work best? But also, I don't know. Who's the one that loses out in your head?
I thought I'm going to give Lewis a chance to jump in first. Before I do, Lewis, did you want to jump in now or not?
Nah, this one's you, my bro.
I thought there was something that Laurenz said that you wanted to jump in on, so I was going to let you do it, but no worries.
I must have fucking messed up. My bad. But go on, Dan. What are you saying?
Yeah, Mason's going to play, let's be honest. So I would say that Havertz and Werner might be rotating on and off a bit more, rather than playing together if we do get Haaland. What I will say is, you got to have a bit of discrepancy. You got to have a bit of difference, right? You can't have all the same players doing the same thing for sure. I would probably look at Kai and Werner switching off, maybe a little bit more. Callum Hudson-Odoi's got a long way to go to get starting games, right? Pulisic's got to prove that he can start games rather than just keep being a superstar, because Christian Pulisic won't want to be a superstar all his life. He's way too determined, way too good for a lot of people, and way too arrogant in himself to do that. So, it's not an easy problem, right? I haven't got the answer. But it's a good problem to have. City have that problem all the time, but they're doing okay. It's just about how you manage it. Pep Guardiola is brilliant at managing his squad, right? He's brilliant at keeping everybody motivated. And you got to win games to stay in all these competitions in order to play them. So that's how you do that. I could definitely see both, like I said earlier, Haaland being a big guy and then putting two wingers around him, or you can see Haaland with Werner or Kai off him. Haaland with Kai or Werner off him. So, yeah, it's interesting. But I don't want to get too excited about Haaland. Just from what I've been told, it's just such a long way to go. So right now, what I'm thinking is still Werner and Kai off each other. Right now, that's still in my head until something significant really happens with Haaland.
That's fair. For me, obviously the Pensioners Club, again, appreciate the donation, put it here as, Ziyech Mount as the white 10s and then Haaland and Havertz up front. I put that Ziyech question as the last thing we discussed today before we rounded out here. But for me, I feel like we spend too much money on Havertz and he's too good. Also, the man just won us a bloody Champions League to be in and out with Timo Werner, who had, let's be honest, a lackluster season. I don't know. I feel like, the way we signed Havertz last year, I just don't feel like Havertz will, once he gets going and doesn't have the C word anymore and small injury problems and mental problems, maybe now that he's settled and probably a summer helps, and now that obviously restrictions will hopefully be lifted more and more and more, and people can travel, his family can come over, stuff like that. I don't feel like Havertz will be the guy. Havertz will be almost on a level with Mount and Haaland of when he's fit, always play. Don't you think?
Is that me or Lewis?
Well, either one of you, but
Lewis.
Right, so if Haaland comes in, are we talking about whether he's going to play or what?
No, Havertz. For me, Havertz is so big in terms of money we paid, plus potential, plus that he just won us the Champions League. I just don't see how he's not almost at least on a level with Mount and on the same level with Haaland, almost in top guaranteed to start when he's fit. Just in almost reaction to what Dan said in terms of maybe him and Werner kind of switch around who plays next to Haaland.
That's why I said the front three for me would be Havertz, Mount, Haaland, because you are correct on that point, in my opinion. I think Havertz's second half of the season should justify that too, because we've seen more than enough glimpses, and towards the end of the season, it's been more than glimpses. Like his performance against Real Madrid in the second leg, his performances coming off the bench, even in the the FA Cup final, which we lost, but he had a lot more impact when he came onto the pitch. Aston Villa, we looked a lot better when he was on the pitch. Champions League final, of course, had an amazing performance, even with limited touch to the ball, especially in the second half. Like, he's done enough to justify why he should be in the starting 11. So has Mason Mount. If Haaland joins us, he starts as per. It would be Werner, Hudson-Odoi, Ziyech that you would see on the bench. Werner, you could make a case for saying should start, and I get his decoy runs and everything that he brings into the team, but he isn't displacing any of those three, and it just is what it is. He'd have to fight his way back into the squad, but good competition, and we run with that.
Hey, I agree on it, but like I said, Dan was more of a case of switch and change Kai and Werner. You sure about that?
Form, injuries, competition.
Yeah, obviously, but in terms of when they're fit. So obviously when there's injuries, they need to change them.
I'll play your game.
Thank you.
Havertz is I think many people know what I think of Havertz. I think he's unbelievable, and I think he's going to be massive for us moving forward. I prefer Havertz over Werner if I had to choose one, right? who's going to be a better player, fit the Premier League better, who's going to play more, I'd say I'd want Havertz. With that said, though, I do think Timo Werner will be better next year. I do think he'll score more goals next year, especially if we set up accordingly for that. So, yeah, it's not that easy. I like to see both. I think, I'd like to see both. I think there'll be times where we play both, for sure. Either side of a Haaland if we did do that. So, yeah, I'm trying to play your game. It's hard for me to play that game. But, yeah, I prefer Havertz out of the two. Let's just say that. And then obviously the money we laid out for him, the potential, he'll want to play. Especially he's also not arrogant, but he has that. He believes in himself. He believes in his ability, right? He knows how good he is, and if he has a good Euros, which by judging of it, the last game he just played, he probably will. He's going to want to come back and play. For sure. Yeah.
Although it was Latvia, even Austria beat those guys 6-0, so,
no doubt about it, but you can only beat what's in front of you. And
100%.
And I'm not even looking at the goals and the assists that he got. I'm looking at just the general play, the way he moves the ball, the way he moves, he's always involved. I mean, I rate Havertz very, very highly. I think he's unbelievable. So I definitely want to see him play as much as possible next year.
That is fair. And obviously, I mean, I de-highlighted it now, I suppose, but as the last question to both of you, and let me go with you first, Lewis. Does Ziyech stay at Chelsea or not? You can give me both what you think would happen and what you would prefer to happen.
I can see him staying, but if there was any forward I think would leave, it would be Hakim Ziyech. I think with age and also depending on if any of the clubs we're negotiating with like the look of him, I feel like he'd be the easiest one to get rid of. And we'd still be able to get a decent amount of money off him. Would we be able to recoup all of our transfer value? Maybe, maybe not, but I don't even know if we'd care too much as long as we'd be able to focus on getting our signings in first. So I'd keep him for another season because I do think he's had a lot of surrounding problems with his first season at Chelsea. The lack of match sharpness, Eredivisie finishing early, injury on injury on injury, and then coming back and having to fight back for a new position, a new role in a different squad under a different manager. Not surprised that he didn't have a good first season. So if he was to have a second season, I'm not going to sit here and say anything about it. I'm not going to be like, why is this guy here or anything? But if he was to leave, I'd get it. And if there was any forward I think would be the most likely to leave, it would probably be Ziyech.
That's fair. Before I take this to Dan, I just saw this comment. That's hilarious. You're out with Mata.
Your dad joke. Our CBA.
Can't hack it.
You're going to see this on newspaper articles everywhere. Our CBA.
Imagine that when we win like whatever else and the newspaper like
God help
back
us.
Page headline will be Muhaha. I can't hack it. Honestly.
Our CBA, man.
But Dan, do you agree on that sentiment of Lewis about Ziyech? If something big comes in, we might agree to it, but he probably deserves a second season.
Yeah, if there's going to be one that's going to leave, it'll probably be him. Tuchel knows he's a good player, but I think Tuchel has his priorities elsewhere and probably rates other players, and other players fit into his system and mould a bit more than Ziyech does. So, yeah, he would be the scapegoat, right? But, yeah, he definitely deserves he needs a good pre-season, right? I know you said earlier, Laurenz, you don't play too much into that, but I do as a coach. I think pre-season is huge. I really do.
Oh, no. Sorry, just to clarify on what I said then. I just mean because of the Euros, we won't have that much pre-season. Obviously, he will.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah. So, I do think that would be huge for him. But if a big offer comes in, yeah, Chelsea wouldn't be too sad to let him go, I don't think. But I definitely think, yeah, I wouldn't be overly against him staying. And fight for his chance. But if that doesn't work in the first 6 months, then you can really. But it's hard to get rid of a player in January, right? So I know a lot of people are linking Ziyech to AC Milan, right? Well, AC Milan have been linked to about 5 of our players, and they're definitely not buying all of them. That's for sure. So we got to take our time with that. They're about to spend 28 million on Tomori for sure. So there's one. Then you got Tammy, and you got Ziyech, right?
Giroud apparently as well, who's now not a free agent.
Giroud, right? So yeah, they're not settled down, boys. Like if there's any team they're definitely not playing FIFA. AC Milan, they've got money, but not that much money. They're not Man City, so yeah, I think we've got to be careful with that. But yeah, Ziyech's definitely the one that probably could go up. Obviously, the rest are definitely going to stay unless something crazy happens, which probably won't.
Exactly. No, that is fair. But I think we're going to round it out here. Dan, appreciate you for coming on. Obviously, Lewis as well. Check out both of these guys down in the description below. Of course, Carefree Lewis G on YouTube, Dan on Twitter at Macasport, and obviously his podcast with Lewis, and obviously their website as well. Check out their newsletter and all sorts of good things. Do that. And I appreciate you coming on. Obviously, I did actually want to talk about the whole Tammy possibly to Dortmund thing, but hey, didn't have time. So we just have another reason to bring Dan back on in the near future and asking whether Tammy Abraham will go to Dortmund. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys for watching. There's still nearly 500 people watching. So if you're still here, be sure to subscribe. That'd be massively appreciated. We're on the road to 15,000 subscribers. So the more of you to subscribe, the quicker we can get there. So get subscribed, smash the like button. Appreciate all of you for tuning in. Thank you guys for watching. Up to Chelsea, and I'll see you next time.